Okay, we have 7 o'clock on our for the time here, so we're going to start this meeting. Again, I wanted to begin the meeting as we reconvene in open session. Begin the meeting with informing the audience and everyone who's watching that our mayor, unfortunately, over the weekend on Friday, had a bacterial infection and was admitted to the hospital on Friday. So he's actually still currently in the hospital recovering, and hopefully he's feeling better, and they're going to keep him there for a little bit of time for observation, but we should see him back on his feet soon, the Lord willing. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue on with business as council, and we're going to, as we reconvene in open session, we do have some matters arising from a closed session that we had prior. So I'm just going to read the recommendation from council and get a mover and a seconder. So we do have a recommendation from closed, which is that, and it's in regards to the downtown hydro dam, which is in Fergus by the mill. So the recommendation is that the Council of Township of Centre Wellington advise Mr. Brad Almang from Brang Holdings the township is not interested in purchasing shares in the amount of 25% from within the Wilson Fergus Mill Power Inc., and that funding will not be provided by the township to Fergus Mill Power Company Inc. for refurbishment of the dam. And I look for a mover of that. Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor McRae, and I look to council for all in favor, and that is carried. Thank you, council. So we also, today we have a few presentations. We have the Wellington County Fire Training Officers Annual Report for 2019. And for that report, we will have Charles Hamilton from the Wellington County Training Officer. So welcome, Charles.
Centre Wellington staff. Hopefully you've had a look at the report. I'm just going to give you a brief summary of what I did for 2019. 2019 was our largest recruit class. There was some large recruit classes from Minto and Centre Wellington. So we had 42. It was a bit of a struggle logistically, making sure we had instructors in place for that. But we got through it. All the recruits have written their certification exams. We just had a little rewrite for a few of them this past Saturday. Hopefully everything's worked out well with that. Our class for 2020 is down to 19, a little more manageable for myself. Our county training website, I moved it to a Wix platform. It's just a little more adaptable, a little more easier. I'm not a webmaster by any means. It was just easy for me to use. So all the training staff in the county have access to the lesson plans and whatever I can help them with on that site. I've also opened it up to our public education, fire prevention, and the chiefs. They have a section on there that they can, put minutes, whichever they want to store on the site that's important to them. Critical incident stress management teams. Each of the departments in the county has a team. It's to deal with issues with PTSD that may be affecting firefighters. Through Inspector Lawson from the OPP, we were able to send 60 first responders. So that was fire, OPP, Guelph Police, Guelph University Police, and EMS to an annual conference in Niagara Falls. So networking, and there was also an educational component that went along with that. Going forward, we're trying to impress upon, we don't have that funding available. Like, that was at no cost to the county at all, other than transportation and if you paid labor for individuals that went to the conference. So we did try to impress upon each of the member fire departments that you include something in your budget so we can continue with learning and getting better at taking care of our own. From a local training development standpoint, Minto ran a Fire Officer 1. That's aimed at bringing someone up to a captain's level, giving them some experience and training in basically managing people and managing a scene. They kind of took care of the northern portion of our county. I ran in Push Lynch an incident safety officer's course. Again, very similar thing with if you've got a senior officer on site, you do need to have a safety officer that kind of has an overall look of, are we doing things safe, stops things that are potentially going to hurt people, and then reports that back to the incident commander. We also have 2 training sessions that were developed internally. One, I helped a young lady who was a kind of expert on hoarding. So she developed a program that we rolled out to the fire departments, really just to get some information on if we go into a situation like that. We have some skills in dealing with the person and also providing them some linkage to support to try and maybe mitigate their issues with hoarding. Hoarding for, if there's a fire in a building that's, or a home with hoarding, it is a potentially dangerous situation for firefighters to be in, just the amount of material that can fall on firefighters, and it's a fire load in the building. So we do have some mechanisms to help those individuals to maybe reduce the amount of stuff in their homes. The other is to do with autism. It's a fairly highlighted issue with the Ford government back and forth, but again, created something. It was created by a training officer in Minto, and he's made that available for all the fire departments in Wellington County, and it's aimed at really just giving us some tools on how to deal with someone that's on that spectrum. It may mean that we know we're going to someplace like that, is not using lights and sirens when we get to their driveway, mitigating the real change in their environment, so try and keep things on an even keel, and learn how to deal with them. So it's been successful. I think it's been out to 3 or 4 of the departments. The others have got it kind of scheduled for this year. Interoperability training. We did some training through Centre Wellington with Welfare Moss's, sorry, gotta find that. Guelph Wellington's paramedic service, so they changed their name from EMS. It was really, they were doing some internal training, but they wanted to, I guess, get a look at how we handle certain scenes. So we got them putting on bunker gear, got them breathing on air, had them using our extrication tools actually on a vehicle. We did some rope work with them, so they had a good kind of grasp of where they could see us in a scene, and why we do things the way we do. Sometimes they're looking at, well, why can't you do this faster? It's because we need to make things safe. We need to make it safe for whoever we may be extricating a vehicle. So I think they had a good time of it. It was done over a 10-day period, and I think they had somewhere around 160 of their paramedics go through that. I continue to provide support to our county fire departments, act as an instructor, participate in their training, give them assistance with training needs or delivery that they may have. Regularly attend their meetings, go and see their training officers, and then monthly I attend the county chiefs meeting, get to meet the chiefs, see if they have any issues that are related to training. In closing, just I've had, I guess, 2 inquiries from counties that are outside of Wellington. One was Woolwich, one is North Perth. They're interested in our program. I think it's a feather in our cap that we do have a very robust, effective program for training recruits on a mass basis for an entire county. So I've helped them out, shown them what our model is. They've asked a little bit about costs, so we'll see where that goes. They may ask me to come back and do a further presentation for them. That's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Good, thanks, Charles. Definitely always thankful that we have a volunteer fire department, and we're also able to keep our training programs going. So it's one of the only ways to keep everyone working in that professional way. I'm going to put it out to councillors. Any questions or comments? No? Councillor Dunsmore?
The only comment I would have would be to thank you for the fact that you're working on PTSD and that you're paying attention to children who are on the spectrum when you go to give assistance, because those are situations that can get out of control in a hurry. So
Yeah,
I'm glad to see it's on your radar.
thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor McRae?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to say that I was intrigued to see that one particular training of interest is basement fires. Is that to address the fact that we're seeing more apartments being set up in basement areas?
Yes and no. Basement fires are extremely dangerous. You can understand that they're below grade. Used to be that firefighters would find the staircase either inside or outside, go down that staircase, and you can imagine it's like a chimney. So all the heat that's been built up in the basement is now coming up there. Firefighters are losing their lives or getting terribly injured in those situations. So through the Underwriters Laboratory, they've devised some and did some scientific studies. It's not just pie in the sky of applying water through windows or through other access points to cool down the heat that's in those structures before firefighters descend down into the stair. So it is I'm not going to say it's brand new, but it is it's a scientific approach that has been proven to be accurate for making those situations safer.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Good. Thank you very much for your report, and it's appreciate having it.
Good evening.
Thanks. That brings us to 6.2, which is our safe communities from Wellington County, and we have Christine Veit here. Welcome, Christine. She's the program coordinator, and she has also his Staff Sergeant Stephen Thomas is here as well.
Oh, actually,
Or just
change
yourself?
that. We've got interim inspector Paul Richardson,
Okay, great.
as well as actually Katie Junkin from Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health,
Okay.
to answer
Well,
any questions afterwards.
Great. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening. Thank you, Deputy Mayor and esteemed councillors, for giving Safe Communities Wellington County the opportunity to address you regarding the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan. For those of you who do not know me, I am Christine Veit, the Program Coordinator for Safe Communities Wellington County. I want to give you, because I've only been here the one time before, I want to give you a quick refresher on Safe Communities Wellington County. I'm the designated administration person for Safe Communities Wellington County. I'm the only paid position. I've had the privilege to work with many different organizations throughout my years with Safe Communities. Most recently, our co-chairs in 2019 were Inspector Scott Lawson and Pasquale Costanzo from the Roads Department at the County of Wellington. Going forward in 2020, our new co-chairs are Pasquale Costanzo again, who has been voted in for a second term, and Angel Abel, the chair of the Safe Communities Committee in the town of Minto, who was just recently voted in for her first term. Our executive also includes a representative from Guelph Wellington Paramedic Services, Chief Stephen Dewar, a representative from Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health, Amy Estill, Township of Mapleton Mayor Greg Davidson, and new to our executive, Wellington County OPP Staff Sergeant Stephen Thomas. Now on to the plan. The Ministry of the Solicitor General has mandated all municipalities to create their own community safety and well-being plan. Wellington County is in a very unique situation through Safe Communities Wellington County. We already have the framework in place that is required and mandated by the province, which is a huge feat in itself already. The framework is intended to be holistic and requires planning at all levels. Community safety and well-being planning is a collaborative process to ensure that services are working together. As I've already mentioned, our executive alone is made up of residents, municipal council, emergency services, the County of Wellington, and Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health. Adding to our executive, our leadership table includes representatives from family health teams, education, not-for-profits, and businesses. Okay, how the plan will look and what is required by municipalities. We will have a message from both our county warden and police services board chair stating the collaboration taking place and the importance of the community safety and well-being plan. This will be followed by the introduction detailing Wellington County, its population, municipalities, and telling everyone how the community safety and well-being plan will achieve the goals and objectives laid out. Following the model, it is the concept of community safety and well-being planning that has been championed by the Ontario Working Group on Collaborative, Risk-Driven Community Safety and the Ontario Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. Whew, that was... Then we have our structure that Safe Communities Wellington County already has in place. I will provide more details when we get to that slide. Finally, measuring results, ensuring that we are making the impact we want on community safety and well-being. This will include keeping our own statistics, reporting on the outcome of the project and services we have created. Safe Communities Wellington County already has that structure in place. Again, the plan. Did I end up going? Yes. The plan will also include priorities based on the Safe Communities Wellington County priority setting exercise, inclusive of your input as well. Knowing that the statistics are older, we already are looking at updated motor vehicle collision data from Wellington County OPP, hospital stays and emergency room visits, as well as morbidity data. Examples of success. A great example is our impact team, where Wellington County OPP and mental health clinicians from CMHA collaborate to provide the most effective treatment to individuals on a call who are in crisis. And finally, our partners listing who we are all collaborating with. The Community Safety Wellbeing Plan is designed to be a strategic document written at a macro level to allow interchangeability based on the fluid needs and priorities of each municipality. Sue, is it going? Oh, hold on. Yes, sorry. So what do we need you to do? As I mentioned, we already have the statistics from our priority setting exercise specific to the county and each municipality. We, meaning Safe Communities Wellington County and Wellington Deaf and Guelph Public Health, will work with you to determine your priorities based on the statistics and our recommendations. Just like Safe Communities, these priorities and actions will be reviewed every 3 years. Okay, so this is what the So this is what your report will look like. Everything is self-explanatory. The reason why it's so important to have your input is because you make Wellington County unique. What we decide to do at a county level will be different from what you may want to do. And we want to make sure that each municipality shines and to show the extraordinary things you have put in place and who you have partnered with to keep your municipality safe and well. What success will look like? The goal of the municipality is to mitigate situations of elevated risk, proactively identify those risks, then promote and support programs that achieve successful outcomes. Those are a lot of words, and this brings us to the model I mentioned earlier. Social development, addressing the underlying causes of social issues through upstream approaches that promote and maintain individual and community wellness. This includes opportunities for employment, income, adequate housing, access to education, and other supports that promote social and economic inclusion. Prevention. Apply proactive strategies to known and identified risks that are likely to result in harm to individuals or communities if left unmitigated. Risk intervention. Identify and responding to situations of acutely elevated risk and mobilizing immediate interventions before an emergency or crisis-driven response is required. An example of this is a situation table. Emergency response. Circumstances that require intervention by first responders, police, paramedics, fire, or other crisis-driven services in the human services system. Examples, homelessness, eviction, mental health crisis. The framework also recognizes that it is beneficial to maximize efforts in the outer rings to reduce harm to individuals who have their needs met before the situation escalates into a crisis, and to prevent increases in demand for costly, downstream interventions with police and other emergency response systems. This approach to planning recognizes that complex risks to safety and well-being cannot be addressed in isolation by any one organization or sector, and that too often situations rooted in issues like mental health, inadequate housing, neighborhood safety, social isolation, or addictions end up requiring the police, paramedics, hospital emergency departments, or other crisis-driven services. In many cases, these issues could be addressed earlier and more effectively through greater collaboration among sectors, including police, paramedics, education, public health, healthcare, social services, and community-based human service agencies. Community safety and well-being planning is a collaborative process to ensure that services are working together so that those in need of help receive the right response at the right time and by the right service provider. Okay, this will be the structure, or this is the structure currently. We have County of Wellington, Police Services Board, and Safe Communities Wellington County Executive will work together, followed by the leadership table that you already actually have representation on, which is awesome. Followed by the leadership, you will have the, okay, so the structure has already been in place for 7 years. So again, it works, and it's like we're able to actually put actions forward, and we have people in place in our action groups. As I mentioned, our action groups that are currently motor vehicle collisions, falls, and intentional self-harm. But again, they're not limited to those 3. Those are our top 3. Because we all recognize that each municipality is unique, and that is what makes Wellington County so extraordinary. While falls may be your primary focus, you may want your priorities to include agriculture, or accidental poisonings, or sports and recreation, right? Enabling you to sit or even champion on a particular action group. Beyond accidental poisoning, sports and recreation, motor vehicle collisions on and off-road, falls and intentional self-harm, and agriculture, we also have pedestrian and cyclists, which frequently actually gets absorbed by a motor vehicle collision on and off-road. Because we have to teach kids the rules of the road before they start driving. All of the action tables will be supported by evidence to ensure we have a greater impact on the safety and well-being of the residents of the Township of Center Wellington and across Wellington County. Moving forward, we need to return to the Police Services Board with a draft of the Community Safety and Well-being Plan by early spring. Over the next 2 months, we will work with you and recommend evidence-informed priorities and actions for the Township of Center Wellington. Once we have all of the municipalities' priorities and actions set, we will incorporate it into the plan. We will then present to the Safe Communities Wellington County Executive Leadership Table for further input, hoping for the May Leadership Table meeting. We will then present it to the Police Services Board, receive a stamp of approval to go to print with Wellington County Communications, and then finally present the final document to the Police Services Board in early fall, and then approval by resolution to County Council. Finally, submission to the Ministry of the Solicitor General. So that is what, yeah. So thank you. Questions? And I do have, as I mentioned, OPP Interim Inspector Paul Richardson, as well as Katie Junkin from Public Health.
Good, you rubbed back up.
I did.
Councillor McAvoy?
Thanks, Steve. Just curious, you mentioned briefly addiction as part of your mandate, but nothing really about the ever-increasing urgency to be able to treat overdosing and such. With the report this past weekend of 4 deaths in Brentford of overdoses, I mean, small towns are getting impacted. Is that something that you are concentrating on at all? Is there any thought of safe injection centers or any of that thing that's happening for as far as safe communities is concerned?
Well, that's not something that we are, we don't have a priority set for that. However, actually, interestingly, just at our last meeting, January 15th, we had the Guelph Wellington Drug Strategy come out and talk about to stop the stigma. And so we are working, they are part of the leadership table as well. And so we are hearing from them. We also have held a few kitchen table talk series on opioids to talk about naloxone and actually give training to individuals how to administer naloxone and as well as talk about what's happening in in regards to overdoses in the county. So although we don't have an action table that's specific to that, we have actually done a few things already, so.
Councillor Kitchus?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So Christine, I sit with on the committee with you, and I was just wondering what the next steps would be for Centre Wellington in this program. Do they wait till the whole report is done, or what's the next steps?
So basically, you are already a representative on our Safe Communities Wellington County Leadership Table. So that's the first step that I've actually been asking, that I am asking the other municipalities. So Centre Wellington is well ahead of everybody else, which is amazing. Because Stephen has been sitting on it for at least it's almost a year now, right? So that's the first step that I've been asking. The second step is, like, as I mentioned, we've already set our priorities, but we want you to know what your priorities are. So is a meeting, pretty much a meeting before our next March meeting, our leadership table meeting, to identify what priorities you want to do, what's important to Centre Wellington, and we actually have backup documents and backup statistics for you as well, which actually because you are the largest municipality, it actually falls in line perfectly with what we have for Wellington County as well. But that being said, although the top 3 priorities are still falls, motor vehicle collisions, and intentional self-harm, you can still, like if you identify agriculture or accidental poisonings as something that you want to make sure that you identify as a priority within Centre Wellington, you completely can, which is why we're so unique here in Wellington County. So.
Okay, thank you. And then, so you will reach out to your safe communities, reach to staff to set up that meeting?
Yes.
When they're prepared. Okay, excellent. So, thanks. Councillor McRae?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I'm curious, do you work with groups that maybe are involved with, say, the Safe Routes to School program?
Yeah, we actually, because Public Health does the Safe Routes to School, the active transport.
Yes, the Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Active and Safe Routes to School community or
Yeah.
committee? So
Yeah,
you
and
work with them?
Yeah, and we have, so our motor vehicle collision part, our action group, I wanted to say priority advisory group because that's actually what we've used for the last 7 years, and now we've changed to action groups. So we have focused mainly on safe routes to school for our motor vehicle, because again, like going back to teaching kids the rules of the road and making a safe route to school. And so recently we've put together a program at the schools to identify risks within the school zone and how kids are going to get to school safely. So, yeah.
Follow up, Councillor?
I'm also aware within our community that there's an active group that's looking at Centre Wellington becoming a bicycle-friendly community. Are you involved with any groups that are looking at sort of bicycle-friendly communities and how to sort of educate cyclists, how to interact with car drivers?
We're actually always, so over the last 6 years, we haven't been working with any specific organizations surrounding bicycle safety, but we hold our Safe Communities Day in October. That every single year we have bicycle safety tips, as well as throughout all of Wellington County. We have several bike rodeos that are brought in, that OPP officers are brought in to tell students, kids like between the ages of, I think grades 3 and grade 4. So that would be 8 and 10, to how to bicycle safely. Yeah, and also teach them how to ride on the road, right? And the proper safety rules around it.
Good. Councillor Kitchus?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So different communities have pages. So how did they all start in their communities?
So so the communities have safe communities groups, right? So the pages originally were the priority advisory groups, so now we're calling them action groups. But the safe communities groups, some of them actually started as COPS groups. And so they were actually driven by the OPP. And so this is before my time. But that's how they kind of started. We had a thriving COPS committee in Puslynch with individuals that were doing quite well. But then the champions stepped down, and so currently we have a municipal representative from Puslynch. Wellington North Safe Communities, they did not have a COPS committee, but then they adopted during the same time that we designated the whole of Wellington County. So they actually came to be during the time that we were designating with Parachute Canada, as well as Guelph Amasa. So it was the same kind of process that we went through, but on a smaller scale. So we helped them identify the priorities within their communities. Same thing that we're going to be doing with you, essentially, and identifying those priorities and then making those action groups and working on different projects that will help keep Center Wellington, for example, safe and well.
Good, thank you. Any more questions? Sounds like there won't be any shortage of discussion when council meets, and lots of ideas as to how to promote safe communities. So,
Exactly.
okay, yeah, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, this moves us on, council, to 6.3, which is we have the introduction of our local artist, Mark Heine, and that will be done by Beverly Cairns. Yeah, there she is. Beverly, you're going to come and do the introduction first.
Sorry, I didn't hear my name. So I'm here tonight, Deputy Mayor and councillors, representing the Aurora Arts Council. And I'd just like to say yesterday we had a very successful event when we sponsored the gallery music at the museum. We had the representatives of the Kitchener-Waterloo Symphony playing, chamber music group, and it was extremely well attended. Almost the whole of the exhibition hall was filled with audience, and around the walls were some of our artists, particularly Joel Masowich. And if you can see this exhibition at the museum, you'll be very proud of it. But tonight I'm here to introduce Mark Heine, who is one of our photographers. Photography is becoming a big thing here in the Township of Center Wellington. We have many really good photographers, and your walls are decorated with the Mark's his renditions of some of our landscapes. So I'd like to introduce you to Mark tonight.
Thank you. Welcome, Mark.
Good evening, Deputy Mayor and council members. My name is Mark Heine. I'm a local photographer. Thanks for the opportunity for me to show my photography on the walls here and for me to present my work today. I shoot a lot of landscape photography as well as photos of our beautiful town. I like to capture unique takes on familiar scenes to find surprising beauty in ordinary subjects. There are some themes in my style that you'll notice. One is that all the photos that I have hanging here are They're vertical images. And when you think of a landscape or a town scene, you quite often think of a horizontal image, or otherwise known as a landscape orientation. But I like shooting vertical, often focusing on something in the foreground that grabs your attention and draws your eye to the scene beyond. My images often have an uncluttered graphic style that can range from somewhat abstract, like this church image here, or some of the color bridge images, to something that's purely abstract, like the waterfall abstract back there. I achieve my graphic style through composition and framing, and largely by what I choose to leave out of the photograph. But I also achieve it through traditional photographic techniques. In other words, I achieve it optically rather than through the use of manipulating a digital image with Photoshop. So things like long exposures to create a smooth flow in the image to convey a sense of motion. And you'll see that in a lot of the water images, there's kind of a smooth flow through the image, and that's because of a long exposure. Using glass filters on the front of the camera, like neutral density gradient filters. That is a way to be able to balance the exposure in the sky with the reflections in the water. Playing with shallow depth of field to help guide the eye, like the small bridge image on the far wall back there. And sometimes even intentional camera motion to add motion to a scene. I often shoot in black and white mode rather than just converting an image, a color image after the fact. But I'm no means a purist when it comes to traditional technique versus digital image retouching. I love Photoshop, but I just really enjoy learning the craft and exploring the creative possibilities with traditional techniques. I print these images myself. I have a large format printer at home, and I just like the control of being able to adjust an image while I'm printing it. And I sell my prints, and having the printer at home helps me print those quickly and be able to ship them quickly. Aside from landscape and town photography, I also do portrait photography, and I have a shared studio in the Elora Center for the Arts. A few years ago, I started the Elora Photography Collective with partners Wayne Simpson and Dan Dunlop. We actually call our studio the Lab because we use it as a creative space to work with models and studio lights and to experiment with light and work on new techniques. We also have studio days that we call photo jams, where we'll bring in 3 other photographers and a model, and we'll help them work on creative lighting ideas and help them achieve their vision. The best way to find me and follow my photography is to search for Mark Heine Photography on Facebook or Mark Heine Photos on Instagram. So if you see me lurking around town with my camera, especially early in the morning or late at night when the light is best for photography, it's probably because I'm busy creating some more images like these. Thanks for your time. Does anyone have any questions about my photography or my process?
Questions from council?
Any photographers in the group?
Thanks, Mark. They really are beautiful photos, and I like the fact that you're training the next generation as well. You bring people who are interested, so it's very nice. So thank you. So, good. Okay, so this brings us to 6.4, which is normally it was the Mayor's County Council report, which we won't have this evening. So I think we'll go on to the councillor committee updates, and we'll start with Councillor Kittredge, if you don't mind.
Largely, the report has what has been already said, and I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Dunsmore?
Yep, CSAC met, and we got a look at the new Forfar Park layout. I think everybody in the committee was really excited about the concept drawings for that, and we talked about other issues, and we were quite happy with the response from the community grants. We had a lot of people that got the grants that chose to reach out and reach out to the committee and thank them for the fund. So that was a real feel-good night. I'm excited about the Forfar Park, and I don't know when council is going to get a look at that. It was available. It's online, right?
It was at the open house.
Right.
So we've had that, but we can definitely get that up online. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great concept, particularly with the outdoor exercise stuff that's going on there, and a lot of good feedback about that. Economic Development met. They continue to work through the strategic plan, and we got an update on the CIP and the strategic sites, so we're just still moving forward with all that.
Good, thanks for the update. Councilor McCray?
Healthy growth. On January 8th, the committee received a comprehensive review of the Wellington County Official Plan by Sarah Wilhelm, Manager of Policy Planning, County of Wellington. The county's official plan provides policy direction for land use planning and development across Wellington County. She reviewed the phased process for the county official plan review mandated by the Ontario Planning Act. The review will address the requirements for a comprehensive municipal review that brings an official plan into conformity with the province's 2019 growth plan, in addition to completing the regular 5-year review. The completion date is July 2022. The 5-year review ensures that the county's official plan conforms or does not conflict with provincial plans, such as the growth plan for the Greater Horseshoe and the Greenbelt Plan, has regard to the matters of provincial interest listed in the Planning Act, and is consistent with the provincial policy statement. The Quality Management System Management Review meeting, the committee met on December 18th for an update on our municipal water and wastewater operations for the September 5th to November 27th period. There were no incidents of regulatory noncompliance or adverse drinking water tests. There were also no incidents of regulatory noncompliance or incidents of spills or bypasses for our wastewater management systems. A recent third-party leak detection survey of our water distribution system indicated we are no longer experiencing significant leakage and that our internal leak detection program has been effective. We passed a third-party audit on November 1st, which determined the township's quality management system is effectively implemented and continues to maintain and meet the requirements of the provincial standard. I learned an interesting fact that due to citizen water conservation efforts, we are experiencing a higher sludge density within the wastewater treatment plant that is limiting the operational efficiency of our digester pumps. Staff located and tested a new pump that is capable of pumping higher density sludge. Efforts are underway to source and procure a replacement pump. Staff are also busy preparing to renew our municipal drinking water license and drinking water works permits. GRCA. At last Friday's general membership meeting, the board approved the resolutions for the following reports: 2020 budget draft number 2, foundation member appointment, provincial flood advisor special report on flooding. The board received as information cash and investment status, development interference with wetlands and alterations to shorelines regulation, environmental assessments, January 2020 flood event and current watershed conditions. The board re-elected Helen Jowett as chair of the Grand River Conservation Authority and Chris White as vice chair. Both individuals were acclaimed. Regarding January's 11th to 15th flood event, the entire Grand River watershed received between 40 to 105 millimeters of rainfall, with the highest volumes above 75 millimeters over 28 hours, falling in the central portion of the watershed between New Hamburg and Cambridge. The rainfall event exceeds previous rainfall totals for January. Significant flooding occurred in several communities, including Grand Valley, Drayton, New Hamburg, Ayr, Wolverton, Caledonia, Cayuga, and Dunnville. A brief Lake Erie surge accompanied this flood on January 12th. The GRCA's major reservoirs on the Grand, Conestoga, and Speed rivers reduced downstream river flows by 40 to 70%. Were it not for the dam's presence, the river flows in the Speed and Grand rivers would have been similar to those in 1974. The river flows in many areas of the watershed were the 4th highest on record dating back to mid-1970. The Nith River through New Hamburg experienced the 5th highest flows on record since 1950. GRCA staff provide 24-hour monitoring of watershed and reservoir conditions, issuing 5 flood warnings through various communication methods and municipalities' emergency services. An incident at the Wellesley Dam involving opening the floodgate required assistance from the Wellesley Fire Department and Public Works staff. Trouble opening the gate caused water to spill over the top of the dam, while GRCA and municipal staff worked to free the gate. Firefighters positioned themselves below the dam, extending a rope across the river to catch anyone swept off the dam by the current. Fortunately, no one went over and the gate was eventually opened. We tend to take for granted the efforts and associated risks that public sector staff take to ensure our safety, whether keeping roads open during snow events, restoring power, water or wastewater, preventing flood damage, or answering a call for help under dangerous conditions. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts of Conservation Authority, Public Works, and Emergency Services staff, whose collaborative efforts ensured the safety of Wellesley residents. This situation could have happened in our community.
Thanks, Councilor McCray. And it is always important for us to remember those things that we take it for granted. We don't see it always, and it just gets taken care of, right? So, again, thank you. Councillor Foster? Report.
Thank you, Deputy. Center Wellington Seniors, we're in the process of electing a new executive for the new year, starting in January. We meet actually next Wednesday, where we'll choose a new chair. Ongoing activities at the Senior Center, always a very, very busy place, just about 1,000 members now. Center Wellington Hydro, we're actually meeting this Wednesday, and I'll have more to report after that. And Councillor McCrae has already reported on the Healthy Growth Committee. Thank you.
Thanks, and Councillor McElwain.
Still no committees, but I do have a question for the Growth Committee. So either Bob or Ian. Sarah Wilhelm gave you a detailed presentation, and I'm just curious if there's a plan for her to come forward to all of council, because that is a very important piece of information that all of councillors need.
You want to follow up?
Probably Brett can speak to it.
Brett, do you want to speak to that?
I'm sure she'd be happy to come anytime. There was introduction meeting to the process, but she promised that there would be consultation with the local municipalities throughout. So there's many more steps in the process.
Thanks, Brett. Good, and I guess, and for myself, Heritage Committee continues to meet. We did discuss a bunch of different aspects, especially in our strategic plan, a lot of outreach, community involvement. One thing that they really are excited about is what's called Heritage Week, coming up in February 17 to the 23rd. We also hope to have some Heritage Awards picked out, so we will be presenting those awards for those who have done some great work in the heritage buildings around here. So keep that in mind. Heritage Week is February 17th to 23rd. And economic development was already spoken through Councillor Dunsmore. So thank you. So that brings us to 7.1, which is confirmation of our agenda. We have a recommendation here that Council of the Township of Center Wellington confirm the agenda for the meeting held January 27th, 2020. Can I get a mover? Councillor McElwain, seconded by Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that's carried. Good, thank you. We have a set of meetings, confirmation of meetings. We've got meetings from Council 30th of September 2019, Committee of the Whole on 18th of November 2019, and Council on the 16th of December 2019. And we have a recommendation here that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole dated November 18th, 2019, and the Council meetings held September 30 and December 16th, 2019 be adopted as circulated. Move. Absolutely, yeah. Councillor McElwain.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a question about procedure. Our procedure bylaw states when a motion is presented in council in writing, it shall be read. And the same bylaw also states that immediately prior to voting on a motion, the head of council or presiding officer shall state the question in the precise form it is to be recorded in the minutes. And in the December 16th meeting, Mayor Linton introduced Councillor Kitter's motion, and it was not read into the minutes. And so my question to the clerk, I guess, is it still a legal vote when it wasn't read into the minutes before the vote? What exactly happens when a bylaw is ignored like that?
I'll pass this over to Carrie.
Yes, through you. The adoption of the minutes is just a procedural matter. As far as the council passed a bylaw confirming the actions of council during their December 16th meeting at the end of that meeting. So that, in my opinion, that confirmatory bylaw confirms all the actions of council. Should it have been read? Perhaps. However, council does have the option to waive its procedural bylaw. and use it in a manner in which it feels it can. So the fact that it wasn't read in is I think it was probably due to the length of it, but I don't know. As I said, the confirmatory bylaw was passed at the end of that meeting, confirming all the actions of council. So in my opinion, it is in fact legal. The adoption of the minutes here tonight is simply that, the adoption of the minutes.
Councillor McWayne?
It's a very, I guess disturbing is the word I would use. The council decided to ignore the procedural bylaw and read or vote on that motion, even though the notice of motion says 30 days, and it doesn't, nowhere in our procedural bylaw states that can be, that's optional. It doesn't state that anywhere. And our bylaw is very specific about a motion being read into the minutes before the vote, and it doesn't say that's optional, and yet we're making them optional. It seems to me that we may as well not have a procedural bylaw if council can just choose to use it when they feel like it.
Through you, your presiding officer is in charge of the meeting. If at any time you feel that the rules of order are not being complied with, it is up to each and every member of council to raise that at the meeting to your presiding officer, who will then make a decision. You as council govern your own proceedings. The bylaw in place is a roadmap that you should follow. However, it is a matter for council to police itself and call each member out, and call your presiding member out if in fact you feel that necessary. So the piece of paper is that it is a roadmap that you should follow. However, the presiding officer has the right to run the meeting as he or she sees fit, unless members of council object.
Thank you, Carrie. And I believe there was a motion set on the table, and the council did pass that motion to proceed with that. So the process was followed. If there was any comments, then also following the procedural bylaw, it's important that you get permission to leave the council chambers prior to actually leaving the council chambers. And that's also where it would have been important that if there was an issue with the confirmatory bylaw, you would have actually been there to make that comment at that time. So I think that through that process, you would have seen that you'd have that opportunity. So, any other questions from council?
So that particular part of the procedure bylaw should be followed, but the rest of it could be ignored, basically?
No, what I'm saying is that when the vote came, council actually voted on a motion and accepted. It actually was carried. So that's why we would move forward with it. If it was deemed or failed, then we would not have moved forward with that. So council makes, as Carrie explained, council makes those rules as a whole, as the majority. So what we have before us today is actually the minutes that we're actually approving for today. So we have, again, 8.1, that the minutes of the committee of the whole, did we get a mover and a seconder on these? No. Okay. So I can read this again. That the minutes of the committee of the whole dated November 18th, 2019, and the council meeting held September 30 and December 16th, 2019, be adopted as circulated. Do I have a mover? Let's get them on the table. Councillor Dunsmore, second by Councillor McCrae. Questions? Councillor Kittrus.
I'd like to separate council meeting 16th of December from that.
Sorry. Councillor Kittrus. We've already got a motion on the floor, so we have to deal with that motion or defeat it in its entirety and then bring it forward. So I'm going to call a vote on that motion. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so that is defeated. So it's, well, defeated. We've not approved those minutes. So we can bring back, as Councillor Kittredge has requested, that we do the minutes of the Committee of the Whole dated November 18th, 2019, and the council meetings held September 30, 2019 be adopted as circulated. Mover for that, Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor McCrae. All in favor? And those are approved. Well, council, what do we want to do with the other meetings? We don't, minutes. They're a record of what happened in the meeting. So we can continue to, okay, let me try this again. That the minutes of the Committee of the Whole dated December 16th, 2019 be adopted as circulated. I need a mover. Councillor Dunsmore, second by Councillor McCrae. Comments from council. Councillor Foster.
It's difficult, Mr. Chair, to approve them when they're not an accurate reflection of what took place, including the fact that the mover of the motion did not read the motion into these minutes. How then can we approve them?
Through you, council, these minutes may be corrected by council. They are, council may change anything within the course of those minutes that it wishes. Like the actual wording of the actions were confirmed by bylaw, but if you wish to change the wording or anything that is not correctly reflected, then council may do so by way of resolution.
Okay, so what we see is on the December 16th, 2019, page 8 of 12, we could say that it said moved by Mayor Kelly Linton. Would we need it to record but not read? But not read aloud? Is that the contesting part of this document? That's what I heard from Councillor McElwain.
That's correct. It doesn't help anything, but it's correct.
Well, that's what you're looking for is accurate documentation. Is that correct?
Actually, what I was looking for was...
Sorry, can you use your speaker? Thanks.
What I was looking for was an explanation of why our procedure bylaw was being ignored. That's what I was looking for. Correcting, making the minutes accurate helps, but it doesn't change the fact that our bylaw was ignored. And in my opinion, the vote should never have been made.
As Carrie has explained that it's actually too late at this point now. At that meeting, I'm sure that if we had that conversation, we would have said we need to read these into the thing. We're now at the minutes stage, so I don't know how you want to back that up.
To be honest, if I had been sitting here that night, I wouldn't have had the minute or the procedure bylaw sitting in front of me to be able to quote those exact lines anyhow. So it's a matter of it was done. And it should have been known that it was not legal to have a vote on something that had not been read into the minutes.
Okay. So that is your point on that matter. At this point now, that is what happened. We've got a set of minutes here, and would you like a correction put into them? Other councillors? Councillor Dunsmore?
I mean, the procedural bylaw was not ignored. Council, as a governing body, as Carrie explained, can choose by majority to override that, and that's what happened. Two councillors left the meeting, and the bylaw was, or the motion was moved by the mayor in their absence. We discussed it and we voted on it, and that's what these minutes say. So I think they should be approved.
So would you like them to go back for revision? Or will you just add the revision in, moved by Mayor Linton, not read in?
Given the situation.
Sorry, can you use your speaker again? Thank you.
Given the situation, as I said, it doesn't solve the problem, but at least makes accurate record of the situation. So by adding that into the minutes would help.
What's your wording, Councillor McElwain?
I had to go back down to it to find out exactly.
Page 8 of the December 16th.
Moved by Mayor Kelly Linton, seconded by Councillor Stephen Van Leeuwen, but never read into the minutes.
Is that acceptable language?
Wouldn't be my way of doing it, but it's up to council.
Sure. Do we have a seconder on that motion? Councillor McCray? All in favor of adding that to the minutes? Okay. All right. Then we're going to
Adopt them as amended.
adopt these as amended, that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole dated December 16th, 2019 be adopted as amended. All those in favor? And those are accepted. Thank you. Okay. Okay, we have no delegations this evening, which brings us to 10.1, which we have Brett Salmon. We have a part lot control exemption bylaw. So welcome, Brett.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. This is a fairly routine matter. It's a block of townhouses in the Summerfield subdivision, being Block 102, Plan 61M 225, and a part lot control is the bylaw that we pass that enables the townhouse block to be divided into lots that then get sold. So council passes the bylaw, it gets submitted to the County of Wellington. The County of Wellington staff have the approval authority, and once it's approved by the county, then it gets registered on title, and then the developer's lawyer can make the conveyances that are required.
Thanks, Brett. Any questions from council on this one? No. Seeing none, I'll read the recommendation then. We have the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington give 3 readings to a bylaw to exempt Block 102 of Plan 61M-225 from the part lot control provisions of the Planning Act. Can I have a mover? Councillor McCray, second by Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And then we have this, it's called the Municipal Class Environment. Who's given this one? This is, oh, Colin. There you go. Okay, welcome, Colin.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So before you in this report, it's kind of the final steps of the class environmental assessment for 2 boundary road structures located on Middlebrook Place in the former township of Pilkington. So this is essentially located between Middlebrook Road and County Road 21. And 2 structures in question. We have a truss structure that spans the Grand River. So that's structure number 180160. And then also structure, it's a smaller culvert, just under 4 meter span, just about 150 meters north of that, also on Middlebrook Place. And it's structure number 170160. And so these are on a boundary road that we share with the Township of Woolwich. We do have, of course, some representation from Woolwich. So Ryan Tucker is a project engineer with the Township of Woolwich. And then, of course, Adam Dickieson's here as well, available to answer some questions. I'm just going to do a brief introduction on the report, and then we'll open it up for questions. So that's so if everybody knows the location, there is attachment 1, which provides a map of the location of those 2 structures. And so this we've been going through the EA process, and looking at various alternatives to, do nothing, either rehab or rehabilitate the structures, replace or close. And so kind of looking at those two structures together, we've been through the public process. There was a public information center or a public consultation center back in November 2018. I believe a number of the councillors here attended that information session. And then also Woolwich has had some discussion about those structures as well with their council. These are essentially Woolwich's structures. Since they're on the boundary road, we do share essentially funding and for any capital works and studies associated with the structures. So that's our role. And of course, if council recalls, we did bring forward a boundary road agreement with Woolwich back in, I believe it was March of last year, to set out the parameters of the boundary roads in terms of maintenance and then also capital improvements. So the outcome of the EA, just to summarize briefly for council, is preferred alternative is to close and remove the steel truss bridge that spans the Grand River, so permanently close and eventually decommission the structure. And then in conjunction with that, the small culvert just north of that, the preferred alternative is to replace that culvert. And so again, this will be published through the notice of completion, which will go in the paper. I think Woolwich had a similar discussion with their council or committee last week, was it? And council tomorrow, right? Yeah, so there are similar reports going to their council tomorrow for approval. And so yeah, that would be the next step would be to publish the notice of completion and get the EA out for the 30-day statutory public review period. And so the recommendation is for council to endorse the preferred alternatives, and then also direct staff to work with the Township of Woolwich to publish the notice of completion and file the project report for the review period. And just in terms of next steps, like we do have the replacement of the culvert in the capital forecast. I believe it's in the 2021 in the capital budget currently. And likely, just within some discussions with Woolwich, will likely be deferred a year. Is that kind of the current thinking? So probably be deferred until 22 for capital replacement. And so detailed design would follow in terms of once the EA is approved, detailed design and then replacement in 22. So I think with that, I'll open it up to questions from council.
Thanks, Colin. Quick question for you. The bridge that we're decommissioning and not replacing, did we have it in our bridge, in our budget for the 10-year, our 50% of that bridge? Or is that now being removed, or was it never really in there?
It was never really in there. So it closed in 2013. And from staff's perspective, we were always a little reluctant to, it would be very significant in terms of replacement cost. Like probably in the realm of maybe 4 or 5 million. I don't know what the EA costs were, but they're significant, and 3.5, there we go. And really, the township invested heavily on 8th line with the crossing at Wilson Flats. And the decision was made not to put that into the township's capital forecast.
But it was on our closed bridge list, though?
It was on Woolwich's closed bridge list, yeah. Okay. It's theirs. I don't know if we reflected it on our mapping as well. It's on our mapping too. Yes, yeah. But it's not reflected. When we report on the numbers of township closed bridges, it's not in our numbers.
We're happy not to show any more bridges.
Yeah, we have enough. Yeah, really.
Okay. Questions? Councillor McRae?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Colin, the Middlebrook Concrete Bridge, it's really servicing just one resident who lives on the other side of the bridge. Is there any other more cost-effective solution than a $450,000 culvert replacement? Like, I'm wondering, would it be possible to just put a steel bridge on top of the cement culvert bridge. You get these sort of modular steel bridges that the military use and other people, like forestry, that we could put something like that just over top, use the existing cement buttresses. Because we're really only looking after one resident who lives on the other side of the bridge.
Yeah, so I don't know if we've talked about what exactly the final design will be.
We're looking at like a precast concrete box culvert.
Yeah, so essentially looking at a precast concrete box culvert, you know, that would be manufactured off-site and trucked into the location and set in place. So just with, you know, I'm sure that that number seems high, but it includes design, detailed design, there's approvals that are going to have to be obtained. You know, depending on, there'll be roadside safety measures that'll have to be implemented as part of the structure. So they'll look at a number of options, but the bridge will be designed in accordance with the Canadian Bridge Code. And I think I'll leave the response at that.
Councillor McCray?
Thank you. I guess just as follow-up, I'm just wondering, for the benefit of the public and for council as well, it would be nice to have a breakdown of what that $450,000 entails, because, for example, a concrete modular culvert, box culvert, that's constructed by a manufacturing company, I mean, those things are relatively cheap, but there's all these other studies that are associated with it. It would be interesting to know what are the costs of those other studies, because we look at $450,000, we think that's the cost of a cement box culvert. Well, in fact, it's not. There's obvious other things. It would be nice just to educate us, what are those other costs?
Yeah, for sure, through Deputy Mayor Van Leeuwen. Yeah, as we've discussed before, it's not just the supply of the concrete. Quite often there's sheet piling required or helical piles because the soil conditions aren't great, so they get drilled deep into the subsurface. Those are the costs associated with that. Retaining walls are quite often part of the capital construction cost. You know, if we're changing the elevation or the span and to address hydraulics, sometimes it's a larger structure. Quite often the road approaches get adjusted as part of the bridge replacement project. So we're raising road profiles, so we're constructing a higher road. The roadside safety measures as well, so steel beam guide rails or concrete parapet walls get added in. So these are all part of the cost. It's not just the studies, like obviously geotechnical, hydraulics need to be evaluated, but there's real capital costs associated with even a large culvert replacement.
Okay, Andy wants to add something as well.
Just to your question, Councillor McRae, as we get into the detailed design, we can bring all that costing so council has an understanding of what the full cost for different components are.
I just have one quick question, and it's the worst part is sometimes you want to have a brainstorm. Maybe here's the place, but how close is that house laneway to this road? Because this road doesn't lead anywhere else, correct?
Yeah, it services one house.
Right.
That's correct.
So sometimes you wonder, like, what is the ability for us to deed that road to the homeowner, which allows them to actually replace the bridge railing at a and this bridge as a laneway would last them for the next 1,000 years. I knew there would be something.
Yeah, so Ryan just reminded me that the Grand Valley Trail, there's a parking area right at the river essentially, so that is a trailhead access on the south side of that culvert. So it would need to be continued in public ownership in order to maintain access to the trail there. But yeah.
Well, it's something out of the box thinking, I want to call it that way, that if sometimes it's near $500,000 to look at something like that, to move a trailhead but I look forward to staff thinking about those things. But is there other comments from Councillor McRae?
I guess I was just curious if the cost also included things like an environmental assessment, checking for minnows and things like that. Is that part of that cost?
Yeah, so that would be done as part of the environmental assessment, where we look at species at risk within the study area, and I don't believe is there any future environmental studies required permits or anything under Sarah? So, so the studies in this case, we've certainly had red site days in our work areas and other structures, but in this case, it's fairly straightforward. So there's a GRCA permit that would be required for both projects, for the decommissioning and the replacement.
Councillor Kitchus?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I was wondering about when the larger bridge that you're decommissioning. I have two questions. There was a little bit of discussion about a turnaround area for those two sides. And also, I'm just wondering about, are you taking the concrete abutments out or leaving them, and if there's any fencing regarding those?
Yeah, ask Ryan, Ryan Tucker to the podium.
Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, members of council, staff. So your question was about the concrete piers. Yes, they will be. We will leave them in place. There's no need to move them. If we were to remove them, there'd be additional GRCA permit, so it would be a more expensive permit for the GRCA for removal of that structure. Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, so we will put engineered turnarounds at both sides of the bridges. Currently, there's nothing there, so people can turn around, but it's not really safe. So we'll make sure that snow removing, so like a triaxle truck can turn around properly, and emergency vehicles and things like that. So we'll actually look at and make sure there's enough room and they can turn around appropriately, safely.
Thanks. Other questions from council? Councillor Kitchus?
So when the decommissioning happens, will there be a fence on the concrete, like across the whole thing, or is it just going to be like what's happening? Yeah.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so we'll definitely have something that delineates the area, whether that's a fence. Staff have talked about potentially putting some lookouts on the existing concrete abutments to provide that sense of heritage for the feel for the area. That's obviously is going to be a council ask when we go through the detailed design, if that's even possible. But definitely at a minimum, there'll be some sort of fencing put up to make sure that the area is safe for people who are in like using the Grand Valley Trail and looking at the river and things like that.
Follow-up, Councillor Kitchus?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can you give me an idea of the timeline on this decommissioning and actual removal of the bridge?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so staff are going to continue to monitor the structure. Woolwich is going to take a phased approach to the removal. So staff intend to try to find a purchaser for the structure. Basically, staff wants to reduce the burden on the taxpayer for understanding that we're just getting rid of the structure. So we're going to try to sell it to a third party, have them remove it at their own cost. Failing that, we're going to look at trail users in the area, see if they can utilize the structure, so we can actually keep it in one piece and it'll still be used as a structure within either the Waterloo region or Southern Wellington region. So that's kind of the idea. We do have 10 years to implement the recommendations from the environmental assessment, so there's no rush to get rid of the bridge as it stands.
Good, thank you. Other questions? No? Okay, thank you, Brian. Yep. Thanks, Colin. Okay, so we have the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington endorse the preferred alternative to permanently close and remove bridge number 180160 and to replace bridge number 170160 located on Middlebrook Place in the Township of Woolwich as outlined in the report IS 2020-01 dated January 27th, 2020, and that the Council of the Township of Centre Wellington authorize the Managing Director of Infrastructure Services to work with the Township of Woolwich to publish the notice of completion for the Middlebrook Place Bridge Class Environmental Assessment Project and file the Environmental Assessment Project file report for public review. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor McRae and Councillor Dunsmore And all in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Now we have an employment lands 10.3. We have Andy Goldie with a report for us. Thanks, Andy.
Good evening. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you. It's with great pleasure tonight that I'm in front of you to seek council's approval in the purchase of 58 acres of land out on First Line at 6518 First Line in Fergus for future municipal employment lands. As council is fully aware, we've been working on this file for several years, and through our Economic Development Action Committee, as well as our Economic Development Action Plan that we had prepared. This is one of our top priorities. We are nearly out of land, employment land currently, so it does put us in an awkward position of not being able to encourage and allow businesses to expand or come to the center of Wellington. So this was one of the properties we've been looking at for several years. We did work with Watson and Associates to do a business case, which council has seen, as well as the Economic Development Committee several years ago, which did look at a couple pieces of land. We've been able to negotiate with the Osmonds and Christine Steck, the property owner, in the amount of $2.233 million, which is just about $38,000 an acre. We will be closing this if council approves and gives authority to sign the final offer and purchase to myself. We'll be closing this on January 30th, so in a few days. We will then work on looking at servicing the property in various phases in order to bring employment land in early 2022, and if everything goes well, looking to be able to sell land in late 2021. So this will give us an opportunity to have property for existing business to expand upon, or new businesses to come in and purchase property that will be municipal property serviced, and working through making sure that we do have employment land to provide to meet our future employment growth opportunities for the community. So it's a very exciting day to be able to bring this report forward, and we're looking forward to moving forward with this and providing that employment land.
Thank you, Andy. This is definitely exciting, and we've been working on this for sure, even at Economic Development. It's been a key piece for them through a strategic plan, and I know the committee would be very excited to know that this is happening today. So on such an important vote, I also would request a recorded vote just for this vote. I think it's exciting.
Just the report does speak to the finances, as if council recalls during our budget discussions this year, we did look at a new formula for using some of our revenues for our OLG revenues. And so that does include that of putting funding into economic development and helping to finance the debt. There is also a borrowing bylaw here as part of the report in order for us to apply for and receive funding in the debt capacity for this through our Infrastructure Ontario. Dan's laid that out in the report. And that we would be forwarding that and looking to borrow that funding. And then the funding from the future would be followed through as per Dan's report with regard to the financing coming through the revenues and future sales of the property.
Excellent, thanks. Questions from council? Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Chair. Andy, a couple of questions. Has Infrastructure Ontario approved the financing?
They have not approved. We're making an application, but I can let Dan speak to that it's just a formal process that we need to go through.
And if not approved, Dan, the probability of approval?
Through you, Deputy Mayor Van Leeuwen, we are approved for the funding. The rates indicated in the report are as of today. We will get rates finalized in the next couple of weeks and hopefully have cash flow sometime late February. So we are approved.
Follow-up, Councillor Foster?
Thank you, Chair. Follow-up question. Andy, I noticed there's a real estate commission of $68,200 in this deal. Normally, the vendor would pay a commission. What is the reason for a commission, and to whom is it payable?
So it is to our real estate agent, Darren, through CRBD, that we did hire to help us do the due diligence through the report. He has been working for us for several years, looking and investigating various parcels of property. They had our sole real estate agent and did not agree to purchasing or splitting the fees.
Just repeat that for me, Andy. Who is the agent exactly?
Darren, if I recall, Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. No further questions.
Any other questions from council? Comments? No? Okay, then I will bring this forward. The recommendation is that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington approve the purchase of the property known as 6518 First Line in Fergus, and that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington authorize the Chief Administrative Officer to execute an agreement of purchase and sale between the Township of Center Wellington and Brian Osmond and Christine Stack for property located at 6518 First Line, Fergus, Ontario, in the amount of $2,233,200. And that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington authorize the Mayor and Clerk to sign a bylaw to borrow the required funds from Infrastructure Ontario. I look for a mover. Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor McCrae. All in favor? And that is carried.
Hang on, just give me a sec.
Yeah.
I need
Yeah,
to call the
still needs-
vote. Councillor Kittredge?
Yes.
Councillor Dunsmore?
Yes?
Councillor McCrae?
Yes.
Yes.
And Deputy
Yes. Good, thank you. Before us, Council, we have information items. We have 11.1, which is investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. And we have the reports there. We also have, is this a recommendation that we need in the information item? And this is by Colin. Do you have anything to add to this report?
Through Deputy Mayor Van Leeuwen. Yeah, nothing really to add. This is the third of three uptakes for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. So this is a joint federal provincial government grant program. As council will recall, there was a rural and northern communities stream that we applied for 8th Line, grant funding for 8th Line, maybe 8 or 9 months ago. More recently, the Community Services Department applied for, under the Parks and Recreation, yeah.
ICIP, yep.
Yeah, they applied for the Elora Community Center for improvements to that facility. And so staff looked at the eligibility criteria, the types of projects that other municipalities were looking to get funded. And we've identified the treatment improvements at Fergus Well F7. That's the one on Beatty Line, just kind of at the north end of Fergus there. And so we've applied essentially for grant funding to as a subsidy to implement the treatment at that location. So the treatment is for iron and manganese removal. So we're looking at like a green sand, what we call a green sand filter at that location. So there'd be a small building addition to the well house where the filter would be located. Also, we'd be constructing an underground tank for the backwash water for the from the filter to be released slowly into the local sanitary sewer at that location. So we'll see. There's no guarantees, of course, as always with grant applications, but we do feel this one kind of fits the type of project that the province and the federal governments are looking to fund.
Good, thanks, Colin. Hopefully this is successful. Questions from council on this one? No, it's exciting all around. Okay, I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Center Wellington receive as information a report on the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Green Stream, and the Township's application for grant funding for water supply well FPH7 treatment system improvements. Mover for that, Councillor Foster, seconded by Councillor McElwain. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we have a bunch of other minutes. We have 11.2, which is minutes from the Healthy Growth Advisory Committee, minutes from Economic Development Task Force, minutes from Heritage Center Wellington. These are all information minutes. We have Heritage Center Wellington and minutes from Community Services Advisory Committees. Are there questions from council on those minutes? Councillor McElwain.
Thanks, Steve. Carrie, I guess this is a question. Since legislative services have been providing the minute taking at the advisory committees, the content of the minutes has gone down considerably. So by reading the minutes, you don't really get a good feeling for anything that happened during the meeting. That's true here as well, but here there's a recording so we can go back and check. But at the advisory committees, there is no such thing. So if you see something, there's no detail. I'm just wondering if maybe minutes could become a little bit more back to where they used to be, kind of thing, with a little bit more complete information.
Have the minutes changed, the minute taking, Carrie?
Through you, the Municipal Act is very clear about minutes are to be without note or comment. I can certainly take it under advisement. The minutes are done by our legislative coordinator now. They're not done by Lisa or myself, so we can certainly take those comments under advisement, but the Municipal Act is clear. Minutes are to be without note or comment.
Thanks, Carrie. Councillor Kittrus?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Was there a request for revision for the Heritage Centre Wellington minutes?
Through you, I've just been advised by Lisa, again, I was not in attendance, but we understand that a request was made by the committee to change the minutes, and they were there. It was done.
I can't remember what that was about, if the request was maybe made.
I think it was
to note
somebody was missing, somebody was...
Bridge?
Jean Gerard, the Heritage Impact Assessment should not include increased maintenance costs as the reason for replacement.
That was added.
That was added. Yes,
Okay.
it wasn't there before.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was, so there was a discussion around the bridge when we had the Heritage Impact Assessment on the bridge from, I think it's 4WG or the Fifth Line Bridge, in regards to, there was some comments in there in regards to funding or the cost of replacement, and it was a Heritage Impact Assessment, and that cost comment should be in the EA assessment instead of in the Heritage Impact Assessment, so that was adjusted. Is that correct, Colin? All right, thank you. I'm going from memory there. Okay, so seeing no more questions, we have bylaws in section 12 here. I'll read through the bylaws. 2020-02, a bylaw to exempt block 102, plan 61M225, Township of Centre Wellington from the part lot control provision of the Planning Act. Bylaw 2020-03, a bylaw to approve the submission of an application to Ontario Infrastructure and Lands Corporations, OILC, for the long-term financing of certain capital works of the Corporation of the Township of Centre Wellington, the municipality, and to authorize entering into a rate offer letter agreement pursuant to which the municipality will issue debentures to OILC. 2020-04, a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement of purchase and sale between the Corporation of the Township of Centre Wellington and Brian Osmond and Christine Steck, and recommendation that the bylaws 2020-02 through 2012, I think that should say 2020-04, read a first, second, and third time and passed, signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporate seal affixed. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Dunsmore, seconded by Councillor Foster. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you very much. Now we have community delegations. We have 13.1. We have the Fergus and District Kinsmen Club. And Bruce Lloyd, I believe, is here. So welcome, Bruce.
Deputy Mayor, I forget why I'm here. First off, I'd like to be classed as an anomaly delegation. We're glad to be here. We don't have any complaints, and we're not going to ask you for money. I'm joined by a member of Ferguson District Kinsmen, Barry Ron, and I'm here today to give a little background on Kin Canada and what's coming up in the year 2020, so we should be out of here by 10:30? I can stretch it. Trust me, I can stretch it. Kin Canada is actually an organization that was started February 20th, 1920. You do the math. February 20th, 2020, we were celebrating our 100th anniversary. This is our hockey jersey. We have baseball and cricket too. Kinsmen is an organization much like service clubs. We have groups right across the country represented by about 650 different clubs. Kinsmen, Cadets, Kin, and campus clubs on university sites. We participate through our own fundraising in national disaster. For example, a program called Say Hey when they had the drought out west. Kin Canada got together and bought Ontario hay and shipped it out west so that they could feed their cattle. The Kin Ride to Low Tide when the banks of the Red River in Winnipeg overflowed and everybody had sludge in their basement. Plane loads of Kinsmen and cadets from across the country embarked on shoveling it all out. When the ice storm hit in Quebec, we were manpower on the ground. Not only monetarily, but we were there with our members from coast to coast to coast. Our founder was a declined Rotarian, so thank you very much for the Rotarians in the room. We appreciate that. He was in the same line of work as his father, and back in the day, you couldn't have two of the same people doing the same thing, so they declined him. And having just come back from the war, he decided that he had missed the camaraderie and fellowship and started Kinsmen, which was the Young Man's Service Club. You had to be 21 to get in and 40 to get out. Our founder was actually a member of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders out of Hamilton. So we are based on a military background. Not many of us wear kilts. But one thing that did happen a few years back, there was the first soldier in Canada was killed, Corporal Cirillo, was gunned down by a terrorist. He was also a member of the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. And days later, Warrant Officer Patrice Vincent was run over by another one. And those two soldiers were the catalyst of what the Kin Canada Foundation started, was the 49th Parallel North Fund, which is it's money for families of first responders that have been lost in the line of duty, and they make an application. In Corporal Cirillo's case, the money, because of the age of his son, it was put into a trust fund so that he could further his education or trade, community college, whatever, as long as you're furthering. Kin Canada 49th Parallel North Fund would assist in that, and we've now, since that, expanded it so that it is all first responders, not just the military. So whether they've lost their line and just recently we had a RCMP where they were given a portrait, and also their kids would be looked after with a grant from the Kin Canada Foundation. Locally, we do crazy things like Coins for Change, where this club plays 4.5 million pennies on an arena floor. We built a castle out of Pepsi products with 100,000 cases of Pepsi. We did Bike for Breath, where we took 3 people that were not athletes and took them on a 2,500 30-day tour of Ontario to raise money. We support the food bank. We support kids' breakfast programs. We tree cycle. We used to sell Christmas trees, and then every Tom, Dick, and Harry got into that business, so we got out of it. Because we were selling the trees, we also thought we'd pick them up for a donation to the food bank, and it was very successful, and we've been doing that for over 20 years. Our club was founded on the 5th of May in 1990, so we're going to celebrate our 30th anniversary a little bit later. I'm here to talk about Kin Canada's 100th. I know I've hence found out Centre Wellington does not do a proclamation. Just so you know, it looks like this. Do I still call you your worship? So we've unveiled our 1920-2020 flag, Barry. There's the right side. And we're actually going to have our ceremony on the 20th of February at 5:30 at Stone Gable, 181 St. Andrew Street East. And you're all welcome to join us when they wanted us to do it at sunrise, and I know some of us have to get up in the middle of the night, but some of us don't too, so. What we would like to do is apprise the community that the Kinsmen are here to celebrate our 100th anniversary. We have for many years given out bursaries for education. We're the second largest giver of bursaries in Canada. And for our 100th celebration, we're going to give out 100 $1,000 bursaries. To date, this year, we've donated 1,500 units of blood from our members. We've raised over $48 million to fight cystic fibrosis. We've partnered with Cystic Fibrosis Canada, and in 1989 it became a national project, and we secured $48 million. We want to hit $50 million by our convention in August. And back in the day, I'm going back 10 or so years, maybe a little longer. As national president, I got to present a check to the people of Canada, which was actually at that time given to the Minister of Sport, was MP Michael Chong in St. John, New Brunswick. How do you like that? St. John's is in Newfoundland, just so you know. And the check was for $1 billion. That's with a B. $1 billion that Kin Canada has raised for the people of Canada. 30 years for Fergus, 6 years for the Centre Wellington Cadets, 100 years for Kin Canada. Join us in our celebration. We're going to be celebrating for a year. Thank you for your time, Your Worship. Members of Council. If we could get a picture, sorry, I do want something. I want a picture of council with the flag, if possible.
Good, yeah, I would say that. One thing, Bruce, do you mind actually ensuring that we get an email invitation as well? Because I'd like to be able to put that into my calendar when that time comes in.
I can do that.
That'd be great.
Thank you. As soon as I learn how to use a computer.
All right, get Mary to do it.
Thank you. Your worship, if we're still broadcasting, I'd like to do a shout out to our national president, Brian Cooper, in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate you coming in and also informing us what the group does. I think it's really appreciative. Thank you. Okay. We, next we have a notice of motion. We have a notice of motion from Councillor McElwain. So the floor is yours, Councillor McElwain. Or actually, no, I guess it's just a notice, so yeah, I apologize for that. We have a conformatory bylaw 15.1, which is a bylaw to confirm the actions of council. So the recommendation is that bylaw 2020-05 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held January 27, 2019 be introduced a first, second, and third time and passed in open council. I need a mover. Councillor McElwain, seconded by Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. We need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Kittredge, Councillor Dunsmore. All in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.